Peace, and Black Power family. Welcome to another episode of Green Knowledge Radio. Green Knowledge is on. We are here on our Warrior Wednesday episode. We are live here instead of being live on the YouTube. No, not the YouTube, excuse me, the Blog Talk channel. And I'm here sitting in for the National Minister Defense of the Black Riders Liberation Party. And leadership of our five-star General Taco Wolverine Shakur, and the National Deputy Field Marshal and Movement Party for Self-Defense, and the leadership of National Chairwoman, the Queen Finger of our day and time, Crystal Muhammad, and speaking none other than our warrior elder, the Black Dragon of this day and time, Minister King Samir Shabazz, was unable to make it today and left me strict instructions to lead today's class, and the topic is a realistic look at survival. I'll be sharing my thoughts with the family on this particular subject, and I will begin on this wonderful day of build and destroy on the Prophet Noble Ali Day. We will have a subsequent broadcast tonight, and we will deal with that subject at length and pay homage and tribute to our warrior ancestor, Prophet Noble Ali. So we're going to begin with a reading from Inyasa 7. Just let me know if y'all can hear me. Anybody who's tuned in, let me know if you can hear me. Here in the message, something on YouTube, and let me know how everything is sounding. So just read this and then we'll get to everything. This is January 8th, 2020. The ability to live and work together to attain and maintain freedom is not granted automatically at birth. It must be taught. This ability, this African personality, is a set of characteristic qualities and behaviors that must be taught, developed, and reinforced, weaned to the tomb by our educational process. And this is from a quote from Sanyika and Waji. All right, let's get into Bob's explanation. In order for a people to extend itself through time intact, they must pass themselves, their personality, and lessons learned down to each successive generation. These things must be taught. Technological proficiency and life's lessons do not come through osmosis. Those new to the society must be taught the dominant people's reason and beliefs. They must become familiar with and internalize as their own that people's priorities, preferences, and dislikes and pleasure. And they must learn to think within the logic behind their host organic, mechanical, and spiritual choices. They must become acquainted with how things work for that people and why, and the why behind the choices that people's particular idiosyncratic ways. Socialization and tradition are two factors generally related to this direct, all-encompassing transference of knowledge from one generation to the next. And because who we are as African people has become so severely distorted within the Eurocentric society, our essence and purpose must be re-explained to us in their generic state, free from the demeaning, dehumanizing character of this alien and alienating un-African cultural wasteland. Affirmation: I have an African purpose and program. Affirmation: I have an African purpose and program. Affirmation: I have an African purpose and program. So we are here every Warrior Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with an African purpose and propulsion of an African program. You get this book, Yasa Sim, a calendar of revolutionary daily thoughts, and other books that I will be referencing and reading from tonight, from written by our Jinga living ancestor, Dr. Nwali Kebomani Baruti, from www.akabenhouse.com. So to support African-centered education and African-centered future by supporting Akaben Institute. This is the number one funding source aside from Asafo's going to that school, Atoto's going to that African Institute and being prepared for the future. So y'all can get this and a few other books I will be referencing from tonight from www.akabenhouse.com. I left it up there for everyone to see. So really quickly before I get into the lesson, I just want to remind everyone that we'll be on tomorrow twice, right here, right here. Just got confirmation from G. Light Burley, purveyor and a supporter and a master in the art of 52 hand blocks, who will be on here 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here. So Eli Burley will be right here with me 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on tomorrow. So that's going down tomorrow 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and also 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be on here where Ifa Lase, Baba Ifa Lase will be in the building, speaking about African spiritual systems, myth or reality. So as promised, we will be here tomorrow for 2 shows. And also on the broadcast tonight and tomorrow, we will have, some vibes. We're going to be vibing tomorrow evening and tonight on the late night. You understand what I'm saying? The station that's rocking the nation. Oh, man. So, yeah, we're going to be on tomorrow. And we got a bomb weekend planned, so make sure y'all come through. On Sunday, we will pay homage and tribute to Safo, our warrior general, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. So I will see who I can get to come through for that. So more to follow on that as well. Let me get into what I wanted to deal with when we start looking at a look, realistic look at Black survival. We come to this realization of this affirmation. And this affirmation should not be in question for anyone who purports to be about the business of African liberation, its propagation, its defense, and what that entails. The annihilation of our enemies, both foreign and domestic, internal and external. Understand that. It is not enough to have a program or a purpose simply unto itself. It is not enough to have a good intention, some strong connection to what's being presented. You have to have a follow through. You have to have a follow through. So when it says, I have an African purpose, which is fundamental, how is this purpose expressed? It's expressed through a program, our condition that we find ourselves in under European domination and control was done with a European purpose in mind, followed by a European program. So whose program do you have in mind? What program are you running off of, and for what purpose? You can use them intertwined in regards to how you say them. However, when you do it systematically, when you do it with a purpose, you understand that the purpose must be defined and implemented through a structural program. You understand what I'm saying? So tonight we're looking at a realistic look at survival, and we're looking at a realistic look of survival through a survival program that is preceded by the purpose of Black survival. That's why we have a Black survive or die class. Because if we are not here for the express purpose of Black survival, we are contributing by default to Black death and devastation, further Black death and devastation. So when we say these affirmations, when we say them thrice and we say them aloud, we are speaking to the internal essence of self. And then we are continuing to move forward on that purpose and institute a program. And we are here on this wonderful day of build or destroy. What are you building? And for what purpose? What purpose have the builders assembled together on today? We have an African purpose. Those who identify as African. If you don't identify as African, we are not talking to you. Those who have come together for one common cause, because a society is a group of people who come together for one common cause. What cause is that? What is the causality? What is the motivation? What is the purpose? What is the reason for the season for the assembly of these collective minds? What do they have in mind, and what is on their mind? What is their purpose? What is their nia? What is their intention? What is our, as African liberators, we must constantly be on guard with ensuring that what we are doing is for the express purpose of African sovereignty, African liberation, building an African future, protecting the sanctity of the African family. This is the purpose. And these are implements of the program. This is the purpose being manifest. So this is what we're building on. We are building on the positive, and by building on the positive, building on the collective purpose, we are destroying the negative. We're destroying the negative and building on the positive. So the negative purpose, the naysayers, the yeah buts, and getting them all out of the room and all out of our head, so we can build with clarity and unity of hope. So when we start talking about we can have unity without uniformity, this is some shit you got to get out of the way. This is some stuff we have to remove from the spectrum. Unity looks uniform. Unity looks uniform. Uni, one, form, one mind, one being, one heart, one step, being one in battle for the victory of an African people to ensure the proper sanctity associated with an African future. Mm. That's who agrees to don that uniform and to work in the best interest of African unity and the sanctity of African family. That is unity. That's not bi. That's not tri. That's not quad. It's unity. It could be all of those in tandem, yet unified and uniform in its approach. Let's say, well, we don't all have to be and believe the same way in order for unity to take place. I challenge you to find a being that thinks different than the rest of the hive. I challenge you to show me a successful bird that flies in its own direction when the other birds are migrating. And when they fly, they look like one bird. They don't look like different birds. They look like one single solitary unit. This is where unity. So when we look at a realistic view of survival, this is what it entails. This is what it entails from the inception to affirmation to implementation to manifestation. Then after manifestation, you deal with maintenance and longevity. So from the deepest recesses of your mind, your heart, and your spirit, this is where your goals are. From the unseen to the seen, and from the seen and heard everywhere. Our brothers and sisters in the Haitian Revolution were unified and uniform in order to achieve independence. And after the goal was reached, they went from being uniform to ununiform, and from unified to no longer unified. So when we talk about a realistic view of survival, a realistic look at survival, a realistic vantage point in regards to how we see ourselves and how we're dealing with survival, then we have to have an understanding of what our purpose is and our program. So that's a perfect segue to message to the warrior. And we are going to look at the warrior's enemy. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We stopped watching already. Talking about enemies. The root word, as our Jinga and living ancestor Baba Rudy says, the root word of warrior is war. And knowledge, we ain't at no war. I don't know what you talking about with this war stuff. Why you always talking about we at war, we at war, we at war? One of the reported synonyms of war is competition. Competition. Are we in the race? So since We don't want to deal with the racial construct. We say, oh, that's a man-made construct. Race. Are we not in a race? Are we not in competition with one another? Do we not find ourselves seeking to be competitive and looking for a competitive edge against our competition? That is war. War. So understand that when we're looking at the situation and we begin to read from Message to the Warriors, those who will stand for the collective of African people in battle, who agree with the purpose and the program in regards to war. So let me read The Warriors' Enemies. And this is on page 33 of Message to the Warriors. And y'all can get that from www.occupanthouse.com. White nationalism is what put you in bondage. Pirates and vampires like Columbus, Morgan, and Darwin drank the blood of the sheep, trampled all over them with steel, tricks, and nothing has changed in our street. And that is from Autumn Shanti. Let's look. In order to solve a problem, you have to know its source. I'll read that again. In order to solve a problem, you have to know its source. To state the obvious, our problem lies in how we see ourselves. Our problem lies in how we see ourselves. How do we see ourselves? Do we see ourselves through the cultural lens of everyone other than ourselves? So much so that we look at ourselves and our cultural narrative and our cultural lens as deficient. Do we look at ourselves as less than? Do we look at the capabilities that we have within us and the lineages which we derive from as ill-equipped to deal with the problems that we now find ourselves in, and the capabilities of us to eradicate those problems? We see ourselves as powerless, inept, unoriginal people, whether it is factual or not, and it is not, we act accordingly. So indiscriminate to the true reality, because we're looking at a realistic view of survival here today. We act as if we are powerless, inept, unoriginal people. So whether this is a fact or in fact true or not, you see the evidence. Now, if we go back to the affirmation speaks about having an African purpose and program. So what purpose and program do we have in place that has us feeling powerless? Because we don't come from a powerless people. We don't come from a powerless lineage. We don't come from an inept lineage. We don't come from an unoriginal lineage. So what will be placed in the mind, heart, and spirit of the African to replace this original people, this powerful people? What sort of alien and alienating position would exist that would have us in this state of inadequacy, of feeling inadequate, of feeling subservient, of feeling inefficient and ineptitude sort of state to where we don't seek to liberate ourselves or our family or our future. This neither negates nor denies the root cause: European aggression, systematic exploitation, and planned genocidal destruction. Ah, we got some factors involved in our state of servitude, of our state of bondage, of our state of feeling powerless. What are we seeing through our mind's eye and through our vestigial lenses? Root cause: European aggression. Do we see that? Systematic exploitation. Do we see that? And planned genocidal destruction. We would not be in a situation if it were not for them. This cannot be questioned. This cannot be questioned. We are not eliminating and ruling out the Africans' accountability, role, and responsibility in liberation. We are seeking to illustrate European involvement in the capitalization model of us being in a position where we feel powerless. Where we feeling powerless. So because we're feeling powerless, someone must be feeling powerful because we're feeling powerless. Knowing the horror of our condition may make some of us uncomfortable, which may cause them to reject the truth of this statement. However, truth is truth. Although the fear of acting drives many to love lies. Denial. Denial. Not that riveting chemical. Denial. A twofold lie where you lie internally and you lie externally. You lie to yourself first. You lie to everyone around you. Everyone around you sees you, yet you do not see yourself. And because you do not see yourself, because we do not see ourselves, those around us take advantage off of our inability to see ourselves for who we truly are and not who we appear to be. That's understanding. Anyone who cannot see this or is in absolute denial of the fact has been wearing some seriously dense historical blind. So if you cannot see what's happening and what's going on, it's because you have convinced yourself that this is how it is and this is how it always will be. This is it. This is it. As such, if we are again to become the powerful, ingenious, sovereign people we once were, we have to remove whatever shackles that are which there are, which restrain our minds, bodies, and spirit. What are these shackles? What are these shackles? Who are we? Look, it describes who we are. describes who we are. The powerful, ingenuous, sovereign people. This is who we are. This is where we come from. Black Chris King Samir is not going to make it today, so I am standing in for him. This is my assignment for today. So King Samir will be on next week, and I'll let him go in depth on this topic. So I'm just setting a stage because there are layers to realistic survival. There is a metaphysical aspect to realistic survival. There is a psychological aspect to realistic survival. There is an emotional aspect to realistic survival. There is a physical aspect to realistic survival. There are things that must be set in place, and there must be those who are astute in those areas and aspects of our reality to be working arduously in ensuring that we have the knowledge, skills, and ability to be able to do these things. There's an agricultural component. There's all there's a litany of components that exist. So I'm just laying an introductory perspective from my area of expertise, the militaristic. So this militaristic component of realistic survival. So for anybody else who is listening and they're wondering where King Samir is, he's not here today, and I'm standing in for him, and he will be on next week. So let me get back to where I was. Peace, yeah, peace to everybody who didn't came in thus far. Peace, Lori, please, peace, original woman, peace, Queen Afri, Issei. Make sure y'all go to www.melanatedgrace.com. And for the Morris family that is out here today on Prophet Noble Ali's birthday, he has some bomb items online for you to check out. Check that out, www.melanatedgrace.com. And for everybody else that's listening, melanatedgrace.com, and get you some of that good, phenomenal, artistic magic work from one of the premier artists, the premier African center artist of our day at time, Queen Afri Issei, and the First Lady of Revolutionary Mind Cinema. What was that? Okay. We were talking about whatever shackles that restrain our minds, bodies, and spirits. So these shackles, uh, oppressive, dominant culture power on our minds, on our bodies, and our spirits are restricting us from free movement toward African sovereignty. So we must be loosened from those chains. But to permanently correct this, you have to know that these chains are not naturally there. You don't naturally have restraints on your mental, physical, and spiritual development and your inclinations towards liberation. You don't naturally have chains there. You don't naturally have something that is restricting you or preventing you. So they must be emplacements that was placed there by someone who can no longer capitalize off your being liberated mentally, physically, and spiritually. You have to know that they were placed on there on purpose so that we will remain oppressed, divided, and more easily exploited. One of the books I wanted to show y'all yesterday was from Baba Abiodun Oyewale, his poetry book, Tree of Life. And I got that book from him at Pan African Connections bookstore, same place where I got this shirt right here that I have on in Dallas, Texas, on Marcellus Drive. It was June 18th of 2016. And Baba Abiodun Oyewale was there, and he is the founder, if y'all don't know, the Revolutionary War group, The Last Poet. And he is the founder. And I happened to go in there on the poetry night, catch him and his oldest son, Pharaoh, there. And he was talking about the tools of our enemy. And he said to me, he said, the white man does not conquer and divide. He divides the conquer. That's what he said. And it hit me in my heart. Baba Swiftwood, Baba said that the white man does not conquer and divide. He divides. Conquer. So look at this militaristic psychological operation in regards to creating a rift for separation. And then once separated and segregated, you can conquer the division by conquering the divided. You can capitalize on the division by conquering the divided. All right, so let's continue to go. So look again, it says they're on purpose so we will remain oppressed. That's the goal. That's the purpose of the program, to keep us oppressed, divided, and more easily exploited. Where do we find ourselves being exploited? In every major area of people activity. Where do we find ourselves being oppressed? In every major area of people activity. Where do we find ourselves divided? In every major area of people activity. And making this choice to be free, you have to identify who is doing this to us. Who? Who? For the English majors will say whom. Whom? Whom is responsible? We have to stop living in fear and put some serious thought into correctly defining enemy. For me, in making this choice to be free, we have to identify who is doing this to us. We have to stop living in fear and put some serious thought into correctly defining enemy. We have to correctly define our enemy. We are putting our aim, our emphasis, and our attention towards the wrong enemy. We have made an enemy out of ourselves. We have made an enemy out of ourselves. And we work really, really hard to root out and to seek out and to hunt down and to kill ourselves. That's called suicide. That's called menticide. That's called fratricide. That is called treason. For if that enemy remains in power after the shackles are broken, there's a good probability that they will succeed in reattaching them, this time more firmly. We're not dealing with idiots or beings who do not know exactly what they're doing. If we were, we would not be having this discussion. So the implementation through the purpose and the program. Strictly speaking, an African nationalist enemies are any person living or dead. Now let's look at this. Look at this very, very closely. Look at this very closely. This is a proper identification of an enemy. Strictly speaking, an African nationalist enemy. That's whoever identifies themselves as African national. That's not everybody. Not everybody. You are. This is your enemy. Enemies are any person living or dead or yet to be born who in any way did or is or will work to prevent African people from being liberated, empowered, and sovereign. That's a hellified definition. And it's a hellified description. And it's very clear and concise. Strictly speaking, an African nationalist enemies are any person living, dead, or yet to be born who in any way did, is, or will prevent African people from being liberated, empowered, and sovereign. Not complicated. Anyone who thinks, says, or does anything against our people who is the friend of our enemies is our enemy. As clear as it needs to be. It's crystal clear. Bible makes it crystal clear who our enemies are. So for the few people that are watching and those who will watch later and they're pondering on who our enemies are, clear, not complicated. Some would try to convince us otherwise. We brought up another group of people just now. On top of our enemies who have been clearly identified, some would try to convince us otherwise. Some would say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Group of people for you to pay attention to. This ignores the fact that one can have multiple enemies and that these enemies can go to war against each other while collectively warring against us. That's everybody else on. That is everybody else on the planet. And there are advocates from among us who will tell you this. See, even in befriending enemies as the solution to our problems with them, some even see befriending enemies as the solution to our problems with them. I'm going to read it one more time. Some even see befriending enemies, befriending them as the solution to our problems with them. Maybe we can just befriend them. Maybe we can just love the enemy out of it. Listen and understand where they're coming. mentioned in Johanna, uh, Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. I was listening to one of his shows, and he said men break rank for fear or finance. Now look at this twofold statement right here. Some even see befriending enemies as the solution to our problems with them. So someone would make this statement out of fear or out of them being financed by enemies to say so or stand to gain a benefit otherwise. But by doing this, keeps them in power over us. If we truly understand the concept of enemy, why would any serious African nationalist possibly want to spend energy, in a wasted attempt to turn an enemy into a friend, except possibly to turn him or her into an agent against his or her for our own use? That ain't happening. I guess that's the justification for these interracial relationships or some of this stuff. Y'all trying to get some double agents. Y'all trying to have some double agent children. I saw something earlier that disturbed me greatly, and I want to make a statement about it, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. I would say to anyone purporting to be for the liberation of African people, anyone indiscriminate to standing within any type of construct of organization that would suggest that black women or compare independent black women to rabid dogs that should be taken out, back and shot in the head, should be hunted down and eliminated. They do not speak for the collective of us nationalists who are really out here. The truth. Strong black women ain't no threat to no African men. You sound like the same bastards who are on the other side of it. Anybody who agrees with that kind of ideology is hunted down and eliminated with the rest of our enemies. It's an enemy statement. It's a statement that our enemies make. That's a statement that our enemies act on. 64,000 black women missing. And the few that's left trying to hold it together. This is your solution. You're a fucking coward. Anybody who agrees with that shit is a coward, and they should be marked for deletion, external. Let me get back to what I was saying. Makes no difference how young or old, what sex they are, and how innocent they appear. Enemy is enemy. We are at war. War is needed to bring about revolution. Of this, our enemies are clear. Study revolutions throughout the world history, where people kill and risk their lives for the freedom to live as they desire. More importantly, read about the Haitian Revolution. And Jedi Shesmu, aka Jacob H. Carruthers, the irritated genie, and learn about African people's courage in fighting their enemies. Study examples of Nat Turner, Queen Nzinga, and Yah Asantewaa. Read and or listen to Malcolm X, Khalid Muhammad, and Kamal Cambone to learn their wisdom about dealing with enemies. Enemy is enemy. Be a warrior scholar and do not believe the hype. There are no civilians in war. All are involved whether we want to be or not. To do nothing is to work against us. To do nothing is to work against us. To do nothing is to work against us. There is no non-participatory participatory option. There's no non-combatants. There's no non-combatants. They don't care about casualties. They don't care about no damn casualties. They don't care about Geneva Convention. They don't care about any of that when it comes to you, when it comes to us. There are no rules. There's no conventional warfare to be fought against African people. None. Because of the memories that echo in their bloodlines from some of the names I just read. You want to know why? Why is this happening? Natanya, Queen Nzinga, Yah Asante, Malcolm X, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Dr. Kamal Cameron. That is why. That's why. And that's not even that many names. That's not even that many names. 6 names. 6 names. I could say George Jackson. I could say Jonathan Jackson. That's 8 names. I could say King Samir. That's 9 names right there. We must be clear on this, especially in our war. In this war, there's only us and those who will kill us or assist in killing us. Look how clear this is. We must be clear on this, especially in our war. Our war. In this war, there's only us and those who will kill us or assist in killing us. The devils and the devil's advocates who will assist them in killing us. Now that's a whole degree we get into right there. Being an innocent bystander is not an option. Silence speaks volumes against us, and inaction opens the back doors to our space for enemies. Inaction, because you won't stand your post, because you won't play your position, because you left an opening. We can be flanked and destroyed by our enemy. Another point which must be made abundantly clear is that we are not fighting against enemies who can be contained or isolated from those of us who want to live in. We cannot forcefully banish them to Europe or some heavily guarded island. We are not dealing with enemies who are capable of understanding what love of humanity is. We are dealing with people who cannot be themselves without oppressing and taking from others. We are dealing with people who cannot be themselves without without oppressing and taking from others. This is their nature. This is the nature of your enemy. We are dealing with minds that cannot survive unless they can turn everyone else into carbon copies of their all-consuming evil selves. And for those caught up in the dream of humanizing evil, be not deluded. They have no choice other than to be themselves. Who else are they going to be? These albino creatures feel compelled, even divinely appointed, to invade every space they have not already violated. They have an uncontrollable appetite for corrupting anything that is innocent, tarnish or strain anything that is new, or they have not spawned to taint anything that is clean, to blemish anything that is pristine, to pervert anything that is normal slash natural, to disrupt or create chaos within anything at peace, to violate and fragment anything that is whole and has integrity, and to kill anything they cannot change or control. This is your enemy. And if we are looking realistically at Black survival, this is the foundational reason for having an African purpose and implementing an African program. And this is the reason why we have the Black Survive or Die series every Warrior Wednesday. So I will stop right here and give y'all an opportunity to ask any questions and to leave any comments before we wrap it up. Any questions, any comments? I can see y'all questions, comments. I see y'all. I don't know who's in here, but from Facebook, but I still see y'all. And as I said, Mr. King Samir Shabazz will be here on next Wednesday, and we'll continue where I left off, and he will go into his particular aspects and his particular vantage points. Don't forget to support him via PayPal. He's building those survival kits and those survival bags for the bug out bag, the EDC bag, the get home bags, and also those survival kits. So make sure y'all support him and y'all start putting your bid in for your own survival. I don't see any questions. I don't see any comments. So I guess I ain't got nothing to say. But don't forget we'll be on twice tomorrow, and we'll be on sometime today, maybe 10 o'clock or so, for this tribute to Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And we on tomorrow, like barely 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, what Ifa and Isay to be in the building. African spiritual systems, myth or reality. All right, fam, we out of here. See you later on. Tonight. Peace.